Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you. My name is Edward Ahmed Mitchell. I'm the National Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. On behalf of our entire civil rights organization, thank you to everyone who has joined us, and thank you to everyone watching online. We always begin our presentations with an invocation in the name of God. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. And what that means for those of you who are not familiar with Arabic is in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. All praise and thanks belong to God, the Lord of the worlds. May peace and blessings be upon Prophet Muhammad, his family, and all of God's prophets and messengers. With that, let's begin. We are here today to follow up on some information we released to the public a month ago. It was 1 month ago that CARE announced that the director of our Ohio chapter, Roman Iqbal, had been terminated after we learned that he was acting as a spy for an anti-Muslim hate group, passing confidential information about CARE's strategic planning, recorded conversations, and other materials to the so-called investigative project on terrorism for at least 10 years. Now, when we made that announcement, we also noted that we had gathered other information, that we knew that this hate group was targeting the broader Muslim community. We knew that this hate group was in touch with a foreign government, Israeli intelligence officials, providing them with assistance and receiving assistance. Now, since we made those announcements, it is important to note that Stephen Emerson, the founder of IPT, has not denied any of the allegations against him because every single one of them is true. Neither is Mr. Iqbal. In fact, more people have come forward to confirm what we've said and confirm the evidence that we have. And that's what brings us here today. Over the past month, we have continued to investigate this. We have continued to go on offense against this hate group and its allies, and we are now ready to share the latest batch of information that our investigation has uncovered. Some of this you've seen online early today. We're going to walk through it today in detail, God willing. Before we do that, though, I want to invite on our National Executive Director, Nihad Awad, to set the stage for us to discuss the broader issue of surveillance and spying on the Muslim community, how this is really nothing new, and how the community has overcome this struggle in the past. Let's bring on Nihad right now, if the technology is set up. Brother Nihad, take it away.
Thank you so much, Edward, and our team, and welcome to everyone. My name is Nihad Awad, N-I-H-A-D, A-W-A-D. I'm the National Executive Director of CARE. So as Edward mentioned to you earlier, we have been uncovering information about malls in the community. We discovered one mall that was Roman Iqbal, one of our staffers in our chapter in Columbus, Ohio, last December. We have disrupted his attempt to continue to spy on CARE and the Muslim community. And obviously, we shared this with all of you and our community and assured them that CARE is safe, its infrastructure is safe, its database is safe. The damage was limited to the local community there. But I'm glad to announce to the community that it was a behavioral issue and CARE's infrastructure is very solid and no one should worry about the information, the integrity of donor information, databases, so on and so forth. So that's why CARE has been set up the way it has been as a civil rights organization, learning from the history of many civil rights organizations and leaders in this country and in other places where usually have been surveilled on by those who do not believe in their cause. The organization that has been spying on CARE and the American Muslim community is no more than the known Islamophobic and hate group, which has been designated by several entities, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. The organization is what it calls itself the Investigative Project on Terrorism, founded and led by Stephen Emerson, who's a known anti-Muslim extremist and Islamophobe for decades. Stephen Emerson is known for blaming the American Muslim community for the 1995 terrorist attack on the Federal Mora building in Oklahoma City. That's April 19th, 1995. It was Stephen Emerson to be among the first, if not the first, on CBS when he declared that the perpetrators of that crime were Muslim. He continued with his propaganda and spreading fear against Muslims and other minorities in the country. He allegedly told Fox News audience a few years ago that there are areas in the UK that are no-go zones for non-Muslims, and Muslims control certain areas. It was obvious inaccuracy, false allegation, to the point that the Prime Minister of the UK condemned him and called him, quote unquote, a complete idiot. Fox News had to drop him. So he's been a total embarrassing to journalism, to the media, but also to the industry of those people who really investigate crimes and terrorism. This organization continued to spy on Muslims. So since we announced the exposure of Ramin Iqbal from within CARE, another mole came, not inside CARE, but outside CARE. He's a Muslim from Virginia that we have known personally as a Muslim, but he came forward and apologized, and they declared to us that he has been or he worked for Stephen Emerson between 2008 and 2012, and he was paid to the amount of $3,000 every month for a number of years. Then he told us that he felt guilty, his conscience bothered him, and he came forward. So when he saw what happened to Ramin Iqbal, he decided just to contact many people he used to spy on to apologize to them. We met him, we interviewed him, and the information that he gave us give us a more clarity about the inner working of this hate group. And he published a statement that Edward will be sharing with you in a moment. Another individual who's a whistleblower within IPT, the Investigative Project on Terrorism, came out with a statement. Basically, this person was telling us in the statement that they thought, the staff of Stephen Emerson, they thought that they were working to really disrupt Islamic extremist and activities of terrorism that threaten national security. Over the years, they started to discover that the Muslims they are spying on are just ordinary Muslims. And this is nothing but an anti-Muslim hate group that has nothing to do with U.S. national security. It is completely designed to lobby and help the Israeli intelligence. This statement shows more about the inner working of IPT. What we heard from different people who worked with Stephen Emerson, that it is an abusive environment. The person who leads this operation, Stephen Emerson, has a lot of issues with his employees. Probably, I don't know if we have anything we can release today or not. I will leave that to Edward. But we have a lot of information to show how destructive and abusive the work environment that he's holding his staff to. What we would like to say today is that we have more information that we will be releasing in the next few weeks, as you know, as much as we could verify and validate that information. What I would like to assure our community is CARE is very strong and the community is very strong. Now, this second mole that we are going to talk about shortly has been spying on local Islamic centers and national organizations. He did not work within CARE. He's been working outside the CARE organization and spying on communities, traveling to different places and spying on leaders in conventions, and would jump on calls, national leadership, strategic and steering task forces. He spied on those and shared that information with Stephen Emerson. I hope that this will help our community understand the nature of espionage, and how gullible people like the Virginia Muslim would have been exploited to work for a hate group, thinking that they're doing good, but eventually they know that they are serving the sworn enemies of the American Muslim community and those who believe in justice. I would like to take this opportunity to call on the Justice Department, on the FBI, on the US Treasury to investigate and hold Stephen Emerson and the Investigative Project on Terrorism accountable. Why he's allowed to spy on a foreign to a foreign entity in service of the State of Israel, spying on American Muslims, on legal organizations, should not be allowed. And I hope that the Justice Department will take this call very seriously and assure CARE and assure American Muslim organizations and mosques and individuals and leaders that they will not allow any entity within the US or outside the US to spy on their First Amendment activities. We call on this administration to do what it can and what it should to prevent these fear-mongering from spying on American Muslims, undermine them, and to continue to spread the propaganda and fear against our communities and the society. So with that, I will turn it back to Edward, and I'll be happy to help him answer questions after he finishes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nihad. We appreciate it. We'll see you back for the Q&A in just a little bit. So now let's dive into some details. So as Nihad mentioned, and as we announced earlier today, we did not stop investigating this hate group after we dealt with Roman Iqbal. We knew this hate group was targeting the broader Muslim community, and we wanted to make sure we could disrupt that plot and expose it. And so that is what we have made big steps in doing. So we're going to share about 5 major updates with you that we've learned since last month. So number 1, 2 individuals have come forward to admit that they spied on the community on behalf of IPT, to apologize for doing that, and to try to make things right by cooperating in our investigation. One of these individuals is a longtime IPT staffer. This person is actually the one, I can tell you now, who originally alerted us to the presence of a mole within CARE. This person obviously is concerned about their well-being, and so we are not identifying their name. However, they have provided a public statement that has been released, and we'll make that available to you all on the call as well. Now, what's important to note about this person is that they said they initially believed in the cause of IPT. They thought that they were going to be investigating real plots of terrorism. But what this staffer realized after years of doing this is that the Muslims they were spying on were perfectly innocent people doing regular work, civil rights work, advocacy, interfaith dialogue. There was nothing there. In the statement, they note that there aren't even any curse words that the person would hear on these audio recordings. So that was the first red flag for them that made them start to realize that they were not doing good work. The second red flag, they concluded that IPT was not acting to protect America, but rather was acting to defend a foreign government. This is what they said. This was their conclusion after working within IPT. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen so I can show you some of the content that we have here, some of the statements that we have, and then we'll walk you through some of the key evidence as well that we are going to share today. As we noted at the beginning, if you have any questions you want to ask during the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat if there's something you want to have addressed right away. But otherwise, we will make time for Q&A at the end of this session. So with that, let me share my screen. Going to go to full screen. Sound off if this is not visible. You all should be able to see the full screen of evidence. So this is a statement that's been provided to us by a member of a longtime staffer with IPT. Again, this is available to you all. The one thing I want to quote from what this person said is this, quote, I came to realize that IPT's main concern was not protecting our nation from legitimate threats, but protecting a foreign government, Israel, from legitimate criticism. We were essentially being used as an Israeli lobbying organization. Demonizing people who simply have opinions we may not agree with has become sport, yet I was doing it as part of my job. Now, these are the words of someone who worked for IPT for 12 years. These are the words of their own staff member who saw that what they were doing was wrong, saw they were targeting innocent Muslims, and felt compelled to step up. This person alerted us in November of last year that there was a mole in the organization. Over the following months, they provided additional information that eventually allowed us to identify who that mole was, Roman Iqbal. And they've also provided extensive information about this hate group's attempts to target other Muslims. As you'll note here in the statement, the staffer mentions that they were sent to target local Islamic centers, mosques in the New York area and elsewhere. They note that the environment at IPT is incredibly abusive to staff. They note that what this organization was doing was not helping America, was not advancing anything. They weren't stopping terrorist plots. They were essentially trying to undermine the American Muslim community to ensure that American Muslims would never be able to become politically and civically strong enough to change American foreign policy towards Israel and Palestine. So we're hearing this directly from the source within IPT. Now, the next person I want to tell you about, the other person who came forward, is Tariq Nelson. Tariq Nelson is a Muslim from Virginia. He embraced Islam back in the 1990s. He was a very prolific writer, engaged in a lot of interfaith dialogue, very well connected in the community. He did not work for any organization. He was not a member of any particular organization, but he was very active and well connected. Now, Tariq came forward voluntarily. After the Roman Iqbal news broke, he decided that he had to come forward and tell what he had done, apologize, and try to make things right. And that is what we encourage everyone to do. If you are a member of the Muslim community who made the mistake of helping this organization for whatever reason, come forward. Don't wait for us to expose you. Don't wait for us to catch you. Come forward now and cooperate and help us make sure this never happens to any other Muslim organization. That's what Tariq Nelson is doing, and we appreciate that now. So what did we learn from Tariq Nelson? Number one, we learned that IPT was paying its spies to do this work. We learned that IPT was using massive amounts of money to entice people to spy on the Muslim community. In Tariq Nelson's situation, they approached him with a soft touch, just to say they appreciated his writing, to debate Islam with him, and to claim that they were not hostile to the community. And then later they made their pitch. They said, look, would you be willing to prove that Muslims aren't a threat by giving us some inside information on the community? Prove what you're saying, that Muslims aren't a threat in America. Now, I want to read what Tariq Nelson wrote about, and you can see what I'll say, but I want to read something that he wrote here about why he did this. Quote, only later did IPT make their pitch. Would I be willing to prove that Muslims don't pose any threat by providing information about the inner workings of the community? Specifically, Emerson wanted me to give IPT a who's who of the community and record public and private events with prominent leaders and organizations. And IPT was willing to pay me to do it. Now, Tariq next says, quote, if Emerson had presented this idea to me at any other time in my life, I hope that I would have been outraged, rejected it outright, and exposed his attempt to spy on the community. But around this time, I was going through a personal crisis in my life and experiencing extreme financial difficulty amid the economic recession of 2008. It was a very dark time for me and my family, and I was too embarrassed to ask anyone for help. And Tariq notes that a quote from the Quran, that in the Quran, we believe God says that Satan, that is the devil, threatens you, people, mankind, with the fear of poverty and orders you to commit immorality, while God promises forgiveness and bounty, and God is all-encompassing and all-knowing. And what Tariq is getting at there is that, he felt that he was in a financially desperate situation. He needed money, and Steve Emerson was willing to pay him a significant amount of money to target the community. And from Tariq's perspective, he says, quote, I am only explaining why I did this. At the time, I figured this would be easy money and that no one would be hurt along the way. He believed that because there was nothing to be found within the community, that he really wouldn't cause any harm by doing this. But it did cause harm. It was incredibly damaging to the community. It was wrong. He admits that, and we appreciate that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what we learned from him, a lot of details about IPT, its collaboration with other hate groups, with the Israeli government, and also who it was targeting in the community. Now, the next thing I want to go to is how IPT was operating to attack the broader Muslim community. You know, Stephen Emerson said something interesting after this came out. He said, "I would never spy on the whole Muslim community." Well, that's exactly what he did for well over 10 years. And I'm just going to give you one example. So in 2010, you'll all recall there was a massive controversy in this country ginned up by anti-Muslim hate groups, as well as the mainstream media and even groups like the Anti-Defamation League, which spoke out against the establishment of Park 51, an Islamic community center in Manhattan, several blocks away from the World Trade Center site. This controversy was a rallying point for anti-Muslim hate groups, for the Tea Party, and others who spoke out against this project. This was a horrible moment for the Muslim community around the country. It really caused a clear spike in hate speech and hate crimes against American Muslims. Now, during this controversy, the American Muslim leadership decided to get together to hold a private strategy call to discuss how they would address this conflict. And when they hosted that call, when they got together, IPT had a paid spy on that private confidential phone call who recorded that conversation and then gave it to IPT. That person was obviously Mr. Tariq Nelson. I'm showing you here the first page of a transcript that is actually about 60 pages or so of this conversation that Muslim leaders had about how to address this controversy. There, pretty much every major Muslim American organization was on this phone call being recorded without permission. This is just one example of how IPT was targeting the broader Muslim community. This behavior was not only unethical, I can tell you as a former prosecutor, it was illegal. It is illegal in numerous states to record people without their permission. Yet that is what IPT was doing systematically to Muslims all across the country. This is not just a hate group. This is a criminal organization that had no problem disregarding American law if it meant being able to attack American Muslims. Now, one thing I want to note about this particular spying is that they didn't get anything harmful in the community. That's the great irony of this whole situation. They were spying on us for well over 10 years on mosques and organizations and leaders, and they found nothing damaging because, as the IPT whistleblower said, there is nothing damaging to find. The Muslim community is doing good work in this country, and that is why people like Stephen Emerson hate Islam and hate the Muslim community. Let's continue. We can see here another example of IPT targeting the broader community. Now, this is an email that is one of many in which Mr. Emerson is very profane towards his staff members. And in this one, the subject line reads, "Read this now. I'm going to fire the person responsible for this mistake tonight." Now, you'll forgive that, there are numerous profanities in this email. This is simply how Mr. Emerson spoke to his staff. But why is this relevant? Mr. Emerson in this email chain is talking about Tariq Nelson. He is referring to information that Tariq Nelson provided. And you can see here that what Emerson is interested in is the Muslim Alliance of North America. This is a prominent major organization, MANA, led by African-American Muslims that's been around for years, does amazing work. And Emerson was obsessed with targeting this organization. Why? Not because it was doing anything wrong, it wasn't, but because it was a prominent Muslim organization. So I say all this to say that Emerson was not only going after CARE, not only going after Park 51, not only going after civil rights groups, but going after African-American Muslims. It is unacceptable, but it's not surprising. Now, the next thing that we want to discuss is the extent to which Emerson was collaborating with other individuals. That is the extent to which other individuals knew what he was doing. What Tariq Nelson told us very explicitly is that IPT was not working alone. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. That IPT was not working alone. At one point, IPT, according to Mr. Nelson, arranged for him to meet with an unidentified law enforcement official in the state of New York. Now, this alleged law enforcement official would not say his name or who he worked with when he met with Mr. Nelson, but he frisked Mr. Nelson, interviewed him, and asked him questions, and then nothing came of that. Mr. Nelson believes that the man concluded that Tariq Nelson was not a true believer in the anti-Muslim cause, and therefore was not willing to carry on with him. Another example, Mr. Nelson mentions that IPT connected him with Daniel Pipes. Now, Daniel Pipes is an anti-Muslim bigot, a racist, who founded the Middle East Forum, an anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian hate group. Mr. Pipes called Mr. Nelson, and Mr. Pipes, according to Mr. Nelson, asked him to start speaking out against Muslims, the mainstream Muslim community, which is what some other extremist Muslims have done in coordination with hate groups. Tariq Nelson refused to do that, and therefore the Middle East Forum did not work with him, according to what Tariq Nelson told us. Another example, the IPT whistleblower informed us that IPT was in communication working with members of Congress, including Congressman Pete Huckstra of Michigan. It is still unclear whether or not these congressmen that he was working with knew that Emerson was spying on the community. We do have some evidence that Mr. Emerson was providing information to members of Congress who were hostile to Muslims, but it's still unclear whether or not those members knew where this information was coming from. We are continuing to investigate that point. Now, as we move on, we've now discussed the whistleblowers that came forward and what they've shared. We have discussed IPT's effort to target broader Muslim organizations. There's one other thing that I really want to focus on, and that is IPT's obsession with targeting politically engaged Muslims, including Representative Keith Ellison. Representative Keith Ellison, as you all know, was the first Muslim elected to Congress back in 2006. He faced a lot of bigotry, a lot of grief, but he overcame it and served ably in Congress for many years. This, I would dare say, Keith Ellison was IPT's main target for many years. They compiled a massive dossier on him, targeting his public and private remarks, his speeches, his articles. They were trying to find anything they could to undermine this inspiring Black Muslim politician. They were spying on him for years, Mr. Ellison. Now, like with other people, there really wasn't anything to find. Keith Ellison is very public about his views and his activism and his policies, so there's nothing bad to find, but their goal was to try to undermine him. Now, eventually, they did cause harm to him. We now know, thanks to Mr. Nelson, that in 2010 or so, Keith Ellison, participated in a private fundraiser at a Muslim doctor's home in Virginia. And during that event, he talked about his policies. He talked about domestic and international issues. He was critical of American foreign policy towards the Israeli government and the abuses against the Palestinian people. Years later, when Mr. Ellison was running to become the chairman of the Democratic National Convention, IPT leaked that audio recording. And then anti-Palestinian groups used some of the remarks he made out of context to attack him and to undermine his bid for DNC chair. He eventually was not elected chair. He did become the deputy chair, but that did cause harm. It was used by anti-Palestinian, some anti-Muslim groups to target him. And so that was IPT's goal, right? As we've been told over and over again, their goal was to undermine Muslims, to make sure Muslims would never become a powerful force in this country. Tariq Nelson said something very specific in his statement. He said that when looking back, he believes that IPT's goal was to make sure there would never be a Muslim version of AIPAC, which is a very powerful pro-Israel lobby group, that IPT wanted to make sure the Muslim community would never be able to become civically and politically strong enough to reorient American foreign policy in a more humane and just direction in the Middle East. I would note that Emerson has failed. The Muslim community is advocating for justice here and abroad, despite their efforts to disrupt that work, and we will, God willing, continue to do that good work no matter what anti-Muslim groups think about it. The last thing I want to discuss here today is the issue of funding. We've learned quite a bit about how IPT receives its funding. I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to show you a bit of additional information here. Okay, let's see. Oh, you got it there. Excellent. We can see. Okay, good. All right, let me go to full screen. Okay, So what we're going to see here is indications of how IPT is receiving its funding. So yesterday, CARE released our new Islamophobia report. And this report documented the ways that mainstream charitable foundations have been funneling money to anti-Muslim hate groups for years. Now, the good news is that when we released a report on this issue of charitable giving a few years ago, the numbers were even higher. There has been a significant drop in the amount of money that charitable foundations are giving to anti-Muslim hate groups, but it's still high. It's $105 million at least. And you can see that report online. We can put it in the chat for you as well. One of those hate groups was IPT. We're going to show you now tax documents showing which charitable foundations have been giving money to this organization that was paying spies to target the Muslim community. One of them was Fidelity Charitable Gift Fund, a donor-advised fund. In 2017, according to its tax return, it gave $67,000 to IPT. You can see it right here, $67,000. Schwab Charitable Fund, another donor-advised fund, gave $51,360 to IPT again in 2017. You can see the tax forms right there. The Jewish Communal Fund in, again, 2017 gave $82,300 to IPT, again, supporting their efforts to target the Muslim community. Another private family foundation, the Abstraction Fund, gave $55,000 to IPT in 2018. The Diana Davis Spencer Foundation, a private family foundation, gave $300,000 to IPT, according to its 2018 tax return. This is significant money, especially when you think about how much money IPT was using to pay its spies. For example, Tarek Nelson reported that he got about $3,000 a month for about 4 years. So we're talking around $100,000 plus. So that's easily covered by the amount of money that IPT was getting from these charitable foundations. They could easily fund and cover the cost of paying spies to target the Muslim community. So look, this is absolutely unacceptable. And foundations must stop giving money to these hate groups, because what happens when you empower hate groups is that it trickles down into hate crimes. This is how it all starts. Money funding these groups spread bigotry and fear, and then unstable, dangerous people act on that. It's unacceptable and it must stop. And I believe that what we've exposed about IPT is a good place to start in curtailing this funding. So this is some of the information that we wanted to share with you today. We are continuing to investigate this matter. We are continuing to uncover new information, but we wanted to get this out there and make sure the community is updated about what this hate group was doing and what we're doing to disrupt their work. God willing, we will keep at it. We're going to keep uncovering information and keep making sure that this never happens to another Muslim organization again. Last thing I'm going to note, in terms of next steps, we are considering all of our legal options against not only IPT, Roman Iqbal, but other people who have enabled this behavior. Number two, the Muslim community is communicating and working together to prepare, as Brother Nihad said, to call for the authorities to take appropriate action to address this issue. Were crimes committed here? That is what law enforcement should find out. You know, when you are working with a foreign government to spy on American Muslims, when you are recording people without permission across the country, you are in very legally dangerous territory. And so we are working with the Muslim community, and you should be getting some new announcements about things on that front soon, God willing. With that, I want to wrap up and pause now. We're going to bring Nihad Awad back on, and then we're going to take some questions from the reporters here. Let's bring back Brother Nihad, and then we will take some questions. Thank you, Nihad.
Oh, thank you, Edward.
Thank you. So the first question from Layla, this is a little earlier, was, will you be releasing the name of the Virginia Muslim who spied on the community for IPT? Is he available for interview? So we have his name now is out there, Tarek Nelson. You have the statement from him. It is completely up to him whether or not he will do any interviews. He did do an interview with a major media outlet over the past few days, the Washington Post. So, you know, if anyone wants to speak to him, they're certainly welcome to reach out to him. That will be his decision. I would also note about this. So the other IPT, the whistleblower, the person who worked for their staff, we are not releasing that person's name, obviously, to protect them from IPT. However, this person did release a public statement. We have made that available to you. And this person did do an on-the-record interview with the Washington Post, which verified their identity and verified that this statement we provided did come from them. So this has been confirmed. And to answer the question that just came in, Is this person still employed by IPT? I can say no. The person who is the whistleblower is not currently employed by IPT. Next question. Has CARE reached out to the Justice Department, the Treasury Department, or the FBI? What has the response been? So CARE has reached out to federal law enforcement, to the FBI in particular. Those conversations are ongoing. There is more I could say about that, but I think we will keep that private for now for obvious reasons. But we have reached out to federal law enforcement, and we plan to continue those conversations. I will just say it is critical that federal law enforcement investigate this matter. And also, if federal law enforcement was in any way working with Stephen Emerson, that needs to be admitted as well. And we will also be looking into whether or not there is any evidence that IPT was collaborating with law enforcement officials. Brother Nihad, anything you want to add on that point of why it's so important for law enforcement to take this seriously?
Well, definitely. I mean, law enforcement, especially the FBI, has the responsibility to protect Americans of all backgrounds against a threat of terrorism or violence or exploitation. And you have an organization that has, with documents, with evidence, and we shared this evidence with the media in a previous press conference, and they're available. We can make them available. We contacted the law enforcement. Unfortunately, I have to say that they have not been responsive as I would expect them to be. It's very disappointing. We thought that the government, once they hear about this, that they will be proactive, that they will contact us, that they say, yeah, we hear this, how can we help? How can we help CARE and the American Muslim community to be assured that their privacy is protected, that their First Amendment is protected, that anyone who represents or works on behalf or in service of any foreign power, they will be investigated and held accountable. Unfortunately, we haven't heard that. And that's why, yes, I echo my colleague's point, Edward, that we are in conversation, but we're not going anywhere. And that's very, very disappointing. Is it because we're Muslim? Do they have issues with this? Are they working with Stephen Emerson and his group? If they did, we would like them to admit. Otherwise, we have to go to Congress. We need to investigate this. We cannot allow nepotism and corruption in the investigative project any more to continue. We were lucky to uncover this plot, but also we need the help of the federal authorities to assure the public that they will not allow this to happen, and also to do more efforts to prevent it from happening in the future. Right now, we have not seen many signs, unfortunately.
Thank you, Nihad, for sharing that. Again, I wanted to defer to Nihad to share whether or not we were going to, so thank you, Nihad, for sharing those important details about the status of that. The next question we have, and by the way, if any of the reporters want to actually come on screen to ask a question, you're welcome to do that. Just put in the chat. On screen, we'll bring you on so you can actually ask your question yourself. Otherwise, we'll just read your question. So the next question I have is from Layla Al-Arian, our excellent reporter. What do you know about Roman Iqbal's motivations? Was he also motivated by money? So let me say this very clearly. We still do not know what Roman Iqbal's motivation was. Unlike Tariq Nelson, Roman Iqbal did not come forward voluntarily. He has not explained what he did and why he did it. He has decided to try to protect himself instead of trying to right the wrong and the harm that he caused. That is his decision. We hope that he will change course and do the right thing and come forward and tell everything. But for now, he is not doing that, so we do not know his motivation. However, I will say that both the IPT whistleblower and Mr. Nelson said to us that they are absolutely convinced that money is the primary motivation for people who spied for IPT, that money is the way that IPT would entice spies to target the community. And that is what they believe is the most likely explanation. But again, we do not know definitively yet what Mr. Iqbal's motivation was. I would like to say one thing about the Ohio community, which was obviously impacted by this news more so than anyone else. It was shocking and disturbing that they have showed incredible resilience over the past few months, not only in the face of the Roman Iqbal situation, but the murder of a beloved imam. They've gone through a lot, and they are standing strong, united, and we send them our prayers. May Allah grant all of you relief and protection, and we are here to support you. Brother Nihad has been to Ohio twice. He traveled there personally to deal with the Roman Iqbal situation, then returned personally to attend the funeral of the imam. And so we just want you to know in the local community, we're with you, we stand with you. And we want to emphasize that there is absolutely no evidence that your community was targeted by anyone other at all. Roman Iqbal didn't even really target the local Ohio community. His goal was to target national Muslim work. So I just want to emphasize that to the community, that of all the information we're sharing here, there is no indication indicating that there is any other problem in Ohio or CARE for that matter. Nihad, do you want to add anything else on that?
No, I think you covered that well.
Thank you, thank you. So another question was, are there any updates on the weaponry that was found in the CARE Ohio office? So I want to let Ohio speak for itself, but what they have said publicly is that, number one, they called on local law enforcement to investigate, because the fact is that someone, it appears to be Mr. Iqbal, used a CARE credit card to purchase massive amounts of ammunition and also weaponry. That was not authorized by CARE, obviously, and so whoever did it, it was illegal. It was theft. And so local law enforcement should be investigating, but for some reason, the Hilliard Police Department decided they weren't even going to investigate this issue further. I think that's this pattern we're seeing, where when Muslims are victims of crime, too often there is indifference by the people who should be investigating. But when Muslims are supposedly the perpetrators of crimes against non-Muslims, well, then it's all hands on deck, breaking news, and it's a very serious thing. So I would certainly say that local law enforcement needs to investigate that more seriously, needs to find out what was being done, why were these weapons purchased, was it Mr. Iqbal, and what was he doing with this weaponry? Those questions have still been unanswered, and look, it's for law enforcement to answer those. CARE, we're not Inspector Gadget. If a crime is committed, that is the responsibility of the police to figure out, and they should take that responsibility. We should not be doing their job for them. Let's see, other questions. So we've got questions from Professor Hatem Bazian. Assalamu alaikum, Professor. So first question was, should the Muslim community ask congressional leadership and the Justice Department to consider designating Stephen Emerson as an agent of a foreign government? So, that issue is something that law enforcement needs to look into. I mean, there are clearly evidence, as we have shown, that Mr. Emerson was interacting with, collaborating with, assisting a foreign government. There's no question about that, and he hasn't denied that claim, because it's true. We've got the emails that show that point, and in fact, I'll bring them up now just very briefly for anyone who did not see this presentation last week. Some of the emails of Mr. Emerson interacting directly with the Israeli government, receiving and offering help. Let me put this on screen for you. So here you see an email. The subject line literally is, this is from Stephen Emerson to his own staff, urgent research request from Netanyahu office. Quote, this is an urgent high priority research request from the office of PM Netanyahu. Who can work on this right now? This is urgent. Steve, this is an American nonprofit organization asking members of an American nonprofit organization to do work for a foreign government. Now, again, does that rise to the level of acting as a foreign agent? I was a prosecutor, but I'm not going to say that. That's for law enforcement to determine. Another example, the Israeli government reaches out on a different time, a different issue, and says, this is Ido Mizrahi, who is an intelligence officer in Netanyahu's office, and he says, Dear Steve, now I have a question. Does Students for Justice in Palestine have any connections to Hamas? This is the Israeli government asking an American hate group for information about an American college student group, about college students. So again, does this violate federal law that a foreign government is asking an American nonprofit organization to give information about American college students? I don't know. That's for law enforcement to determine, but it's certainly concerning. And we also have, you can see here at the bottom of this email, Ido Mizrahi, Senior Intelligence Coordinator, Prime Minister's Office, Ministry of Strategic Affairs. No doubt who this is and who they're working for. And so that's an open question, and that's something that law enforcement needs to look into and figure out. Next question. And then the question is, based on the Islamophobia report, it seems there's a very explicit connection between the Israeli government and paid and unpaid agents who are demonizing the community. How do we respond to this collectively? Well, I think the first anecdote, Dr. Bazian, is sunlight, right? We've got to expose what is being done. We've got to draw the connections that an anti-Muslim hate group that is dedicated, according to an IPT staffer, to serving the Israeli government, spied on, for example, Keith Ellison, then used that thing, that recording they got, to then harm Keith Ellison's chances of becoming DNC chair based on his support of Palestinian human rights. So there are clear connections here. And I think we as the Muslim community are well aware of this. It's not a surprise to us. And it's not, by the way, just the Israeli government. There are other foreign governments that target the Muslim community. The Chinese government has been, we believe, taking actions to monitor the community. We've had hacking attempts by individuals, massive hacking attempts by individuals in China that have failed. You've got foreign governments in the Middle East, the UAE, for example, that designated numerous American Muslim organizations as terrorists because we spoke up for freedom of speech, for the right to protest. So you've seen this pattern again and again of foreign entities trying to target American Muslims. That is a sign of the importance of our community. People don't target insignificant individuals. They target people who can make a positive difference. That is what Muslim Americans are doing, and that is why we've been targeted over and over again. And so I think we need to expose this to the broader community so that political leaders, media outlets know what's happening, and then we can fight back against it collectively in the court of public opinion and, when appropriate, in the court of law. Nihad, do you want to add anything on that point?
No, I'm good.
Okay. And then the last thing, have any prominent, the question is, have any prominent Jewish national organizations condemned IPT's behavior? The specific questions were the ADL, the AJC, the JCRC, the federations. I have not heard of that if they have. I'm not familiar with that. But I will say that there have been many Americans of various faiths, including the Jewish community, the Christian community, the secular community, who have expressed solidarity with CARE and with the Muslim community. We appreciate those organizations, Jewish, Christian, and otherwise, who have spoken up. Thank you for your solidarity and your support. We greatly value that interfaith collaboration. And just as we stand up for you when you're under the threat from bigotry, from racism, from anti-Semitism, we appreciate you standing with us when we are under threat from Islamophobia. Last question we have here. What if wasn't there a third mole? What's the latest with that person? So we have gotten some indication in our investigation that IPT was using various spies to surveil public Muslim events. That's not a surprise. Most Muslim organizations generally assume that if they're holding a public event, there's someone there from the Islamophobia industry recording them. We would, of course, like to know who those people are so we can make sure that we are not letting them to our private spaces. But we were told that IPT has been using another spy, not affiliated with an organization, but a spy who has been going to events to record them using a camera in their purse. The only thing we know about this person is gender, purse, and a reference to their ethnicity, which I'm not going to share, obviously, because it's not relevant. And so we are, investigating, but we have not identified that person. But we are continuing to look into this and gather more information. What steps are CARE and other Muslim organizations taking within their own communities to ensure that similar cases of spying do not happen in the future? Nihad, I want to let you take this because, Brother Nihad, you as the founder of CARE and the person who has led this organization for so many years, you've seen a lot. You've seen the Muslim community be a victim of spying. So what advice would you have for the community about how to protect ourselves from this without being overly paranoid, without turning against each other, without stopping the good work we're doing? What advice do you have to community members who are wondering, what should we be doing to keep ourselves safe?
Well, thank you. First of all, I would say the community has to remain strong and united. Part of the COINTELPRO program and the espionage efforts like this is really to sow the seeds of mistrust among members of an organization or the community. So we are strong and we are united. Because we are strong and united and gaining some prominence in defense of people who need our defense, those people who do not believe in justice for all are spying on all of us to undermine us. So don't be discouraged. Number two, there's two issues. One is technical And our communities and organizations have to do a better job to have IT security protocols in place to make sure that they vet the right people when they come and work for them or volunteer for them, without obviously, as you said, Edward, of being paranoid, but to be careful, to be aware, and not to allow people to exploit, your openness, your welcomeness. Don't be soft when it comes to security issues. The organization CARE has been very strong on the security infrastructure, and even the way CARE is structured, where we have different offices and they enjoy independence. If you harm one local office, the impact is local, although we feel it, but it does not really disrupt the organization as a whole. And that's how we created this organization, because we anticipate that hate groups and Islamophobes and racists will not allow us to continue to do our job, and they will not just sit on their hands and see American Muslims and other minorities gaining some voice. Thirdly is encourage people to come forward. And here I commend the whistleblower and Tariq Nelson for coming forward. And I apologize. Work with the community, don't work against it. It's your community. And these people have shown us that over the years, they have been deceived. They have been spying on innocent people and innocuous activities for the interest of a foreign government and to advance the cause of hate mongering in the United States and spreading fear and panic. Don't do that. Help your community be with it. Don't be with the other side. And we at CARE also have done a seminar already with the national leadership, showing them how we dealt with this issue, how we were proactive, and we shared some notes and things that we learned that we need to do better at CARE. So it's a shared experience. And lastly, learn from the history of those who came before us. African Americans, the civil rights movement within African Americans, Latinos, organizations, and other minorities, they all have been spied on, and they have been undermined, and they have smeared their leadership, but they survived and they have thrived. So we are in their footsteps. So let's take this not as a weak moment, but it is as a moment of strength. And finally, if I may say, Edward, after really commending these people who came forward, and we encourage more if there are any, because eventually they will be exposed. And these individuals who came forward proved that this hate organization does not care about America or national interest. They're caring about undermining an important civic work of the Muslim community. And that's really my last point. We heard from them, from Tariq and other people, that the aim of Stephen Emerson and the Islamophobes is to prevent the Muslim community, and in particular CARE, from gaining prominence and influence in the society in defense of people who need us. So I call on our friends in the Muslim community and friends of Muslims who are watching or who will be watching this, consider today as a day of solidarity. Go ahead and contribute and show any kind of support for an organization you believe in that defends justice for all, and in particular CARE. Go to our chapters and offer them some kind of support. Let that moment be a moment of solidarity and growth instead of just looking back at the past. No, moving forward, because yes, we are gaining influence because people need us to speak for them and to defend their rights at home and abroad. And this is the nightmare for Stephen Emerson and his allies.
Thank you, Nihad. And I think that's an important point. That we now know why they were doing this, right? That they are terrified that the Muslim American community will use our political activism, our civic engagement, and our legal expertise to fight for justice in this country and around the world. They are terrified of that. And you know what? They're right to be afraid, because that's exactly what we've been doing and exactly what we're going to continue doing, inshallah. We are working to improve the lives of our neighbors, of our friends, of our country. This is our country, and we are trying to make things better for everyone, harnessing our values to do that. That is what terrifies people like Stephen Emerson at Daniel Pipes. And I would say to these individuals, you all are wasting your life. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money spying our community. And the funny thing is, some of you have had access to the highest level conversations of this organization. And so there's nothing to be found. You know that we're doing good work, and yet you still persist in lying. You still persist in your activity. You plan and God plans, and God is the best of planners. Never forget that. Brother Nihad, do you want to give us any closing remarks before we wrap up?
Well, thank you, Edward, and thank you for friends in the media who are covering the story. As you have seen, CARE is forward looking. CARE is transparent organization. We did not just throw things under the rug, as some people said, "Oh, don't do this." No, we would like to be transparent, and we are doing this from a point of strength. We are proactive. We got the information. We timed every step of the way. We investigated, and we decided when and how to expose this information. And there's more to come, so stay tuned.
Thank you, Brother Nihad. Thank you for everyone who joined us online. Thank you to everyone in the comments. Thank you, Professor Bazian, for your donation support of CARE. And we again encourage everyone to donate to whatever Muslim organizations you're supporting, including our CARE chapters. This is a good day to support each other and support the community. If anyone has any follow-up questions, let us know. We have put out a press release that has all these images and documents. I'll ask our coordinator to put a link to that press release in the comments on Facebook so you can access and download these images. But if you have any trouble getting it, let us know. We can provide it to you directly, God willing. Until next time, inshallah, God willing, assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.